It's happening.
Oh man, it's like a week and a half late. We have let our fans down, man.
Yep. What is Zach Talander said? Lady and gentlemen. Oh, really?
Lady and gentlemen. How's my audio with these guys?
You sound really good to me. How do I sound to you?
Great, dude. It's that big, huge mic.
Normal as always.
Size matters.
It's my. Yes, it does.
For you kids that haven't tuned in a while, size does matter.
Oh no. Hey, this we switched to a new streaming software. This is our first time to use it. Well, and I was kind of poking around in the menus. There's all these little things where it's like you can add screen sharing. There's a bunch of hotkeys. So I guess they're planning for you to like have a full production system studio going on. I think we're not going to get as much use out of it being as possible here. What? Oh, never miss a comment. There it is.
Yeah, apparently if you chat us on the Facebook or the YouTube, it should populate in here, and I should be able to just grab it and show your intelligent comment for everyone to see, like this.
Yes. It'll just pop up right there on the screen.
Yeah. Speaking of popping up,
yeah,
we got what do we have on the slate of options to discuss? We got the Diddy party.
Yeah.
I don't know why this has captured the imagination of the planet, but it has. So we got that.
Okay. Yeah. What else?
What else we got? We got the Chinese trade deal. Not so much a trade deal. Maybe not even talking anymore, but we will.
Yeah.
Situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was a bunch of like weirdness too with there was some court. One I hadn't even heard of, but it's like
you can't use these tariffs, and then the other one next day, yes, you can.
Yes, you can. Yeah, just overrode them, and there's like 2 other lawsuits going on. This is really wild. Yeah, so that's going on.
This guy gets sued more than any president in recent memory. Just
well, you do
something today. Give me the list of things he did. That'll tell me how many lawsuits we need to file.
Yeah. Well, I speaking of that, I had heard a really interesting theory. And not really a theory so much as it was like just kind of a supposition. So let's say you were an adversarial, a frenemy. So like China and America, we're not enemies, we're frenemies. Like
depending on which, do you read Esquire or Cosmopolitan? That would tell you.
Yeah, but like we've had a long history together, most often being allies. Anyway, I mean, it's not like, oh dang, we're recently shooting at each other, we're frenemies,
Okay, all right, yeah.
But if you were a frenemy like this, and if you wanted to gain the upper hand, wouldn't the best bang for your buck right now not be lobbyists at all? Wouldn't the best bang for your buck be law firms? Like if you were, let's say, so China and the U.S., because of the tariff stuff is kind of like particularly tense, right?
Sticky wicket.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you could sit there at the negotiating table, or you could use a whole bunch of dark money means, however it was that you want to do it. There's so many ways to funnel money in and out of systems, whatever, and just fund the lawsuits. And it's like, hey, we found out that the legal system over there is so screwy that you just have to like find someone who hates Trump, and you can pretty much get whatever injunction you want. And so it's like, we're not going to allow you to put a tariff on us because we can stop you using your.
We'll sue you in your own court.
Your own court, yeah, and it'll be an American plaintiff or whatever. We'll make sure it's all done properly.
Yeah,
but like
properly, yeah.
The money will come from us.
Hell, they might be better at following the law than he is.
Well, it's one of those things that it's I think it's like,
it's a laugh line, but it's not really a joke.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, it's not a theory. It's more of like a supposition. Like what, if you were China, wouldn't this be the best use of your best strategy that you could use? And I thought, huh,
I,
that's fascinating.
yeah, I wouldn't put it past them if they were, you know.
Um,
So
they're smart enough. They probably figured that
yeah.
out long before we did. Like, hey, wait a
Well, I thought
second.
it was interesting that the judge's ruling in the injunction
Mhm.
was, we're not saying whether this is a good or a bad idea or whether it was even effective. We're just saying it was illegal. You know,
And you don't have the
um,
authority to do this.
you don't have the authority. And
Yeah.
the statute, I was explaining this to somebody the other day, and they were like, "Oh, I didn't realize that's how they were doing it." I'm like, "Yeah, all these moves. Well, I mean, not all these moves, but a
Majority.
preponderance of the
Yeah.
moves that are being made, right? Whether it's on tariffs or on this university funding or on immigration, is all being
Because
done
hold
under
on one
these.
second. One second. One second. We got to use the correct word. It's an emergency.
Correct. It's an emergency. And so because it's an emergency, and somebody was making the point in California, when the fires were going on, that, once they declared an emergency, then it cleared all this red tape that normally you would have to wait for these permits, but now you don't have to wait for the permit, whatever. And somebody had suggested, well, these emergency measures work pretty well. Why don't we just make them the
Just leave them.
regular measures? Yeah, just leave
Yeah.
them. Um,
Why are we
so
wasting
yeah,
our time without these?
non-emergency. Yeah, exactly. Everything's an emergency. And I think that's I think you pointed this out to me years ago that hey, these laws are on the books. It's just they're just laying around waiting for somebody to use them. And this administration calculated. I don't know whether the calculation was a good one or a bad one, but they calculated that, hey, it's up to us to decide what the emergency is. So we're just going to go ahead and declare one,
Mm-hmm.
and and then start using all these expanded powers.
Yeah.
And I, as a small government, small C conservative, that part of the part of my being that likes the checks and balances and likes the division of power. Uh, the vast majority of these moves that he's making, even if I like the outcome or whatever else, I find just inherently objectionable in the sense that
Right.
they're not, you know,
Oh, I was reading the funniest article. Same general idea. It was on Zero Hedge, which is very much a sort of von Mises, sort of Austrian school. They tend to collect people like that, but they tend to also be fairly pro-Trump, except on tariff
which is
stuff.
weird.
Tariff stuff, they're like, no.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a funny one article in there where they were talking about this block that had just happened from this court, which again on appeal has now already been paused or overturned. I'm not sure what the
It's a
exact
stay.
status of it is. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's paused.
It's been stayed. Yeah.
So, and yes, it is more intentional. Every time he grows a beard, he looks better, and this is why. Um, anyway, but they said it was funny. They were like, we feel really strange about this because I think this is. They're like, I think this is good news. Like it's a little weird that one person could simply decide trade policy for the entire
It's
country without
it's
any
not only
review
weird.
whatsoever. Like that
Yeah.
has always struck us as being strange, but we don't really want it coming from the judge. What we want is for Congress to reassert its power over taxes and say, no, you're not allowed to do this. Uh,
Well, and
Instead
and
of,
so
yeah,
yeah.
anyway. So it was kind of
Well,
funny. They're like, this has always felt strange, but
well, that's the argument that the Trump people put in front of the second court, the appeals court, to get the stay, which was, look, it's basically they're which I don't think this is genuine at all, but like, hey, we were reluctant to declare an emergency to begin with,
by the American people.
but I mean, here are the facts. We had to declare one, and we told the American people this is what we're going to do. They voted for it. Congress even had a chance to put a stop to it if they didn't like it. That went in front of Congress last month, and it was voted down. So where does the judiciary come in here? Uh,
Hmm.
what role are they playing? I think it's an interesting. The thing is about the law, and this is just to step back from this particular case, but just
Big picture, big picture.
big picture. Like I remember my ex-wife went to law school, and we were living downtown in Houston. Her law school was downtown. She could walk there. And I, was working for myself. So I would pop in and audit, classes from time to time. And, which is just my favorite. It was like so fun. And it always struck me that, the law, it's like normal citizens hold up the law as this, like, it's almost like, hey, we're not a
It's sacred.
society of, right. We're not led by men. We're led by the law, and like nobody is above the law, whatever that is. Right. And the irony is, it's just a collection of, words and a collection of precedences and a collection of opinions about those words and those precedences.
Yep.
Which, basically you could agree or disagree with any of it. And half the time people challenge, well, actually that's never been adjudicated. And I remember learning that phrase back then and thinking, wow, this is crazy. How many open questions are there that have never been adjudicated?
A ton.
Well, and actually they're innumerable, I think, to pull a Spock out. It's literally any question that can be asked has not yet been adjudicated because according to some of these readings, because you can literally just say, well, like, for example, there's the case that is supposed to decide birthright citizenship. There's, I think, 2 or 3 cases where this has been tested over the years, and it has sided with the people claiming the birthright citizenship both times. But that doesn't mean that the entire question has been adjudicated. It just means their particular questions have been adjudicated. And this obviously doesn't apply to everybody because of X or Y or Z or whatever. And that's one of the things that is being pushed now, I think, by the Trump administration, is to ask the Supreme Court to weigh in on, hey, can a judge over here issue an injunction to stop an entire national policy, and I would think, just, I'm not a legal scholar, but I would just think, okay, common sense wise, well, what is the recourse if they start implementing things that do go against the Constitution or do go against previously issued congressional diktat, whatever that is?
Yeah.
There is no other remedy but to go to the court. So I don't see how in the world they would the court system would give up the ability to put an injunction in place. I don't know. That'll be interesting. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think what will if that power is curtailed, it'll be from the Supreme Court, and it'll be because they're just fed up. So this happened under the first Trump administration, but it's happening. It sort of slowed down during Biden, but then it's ramped up to just kind of absurd degrees in the second Trump administration, where it's basically all the Supreme Court has time to do now is handle emergency appeals from every, and it's like, oh, it's this judge again, oh, this judge in Hawaii just struck down blah, blah, blah. And then there's emergency repeal and emergency this, emergency that. And you have to like rule on all this stuff. You have to rule first. I mean, the first step is, can we look at this right now, or do we need to wait for the appeals court to go do their thing? Well, that takes time, and you have to be briefed on it, and you got to have a debate within your, closed chambers, and you got to vote, you got to write it up. And it's just like, this is just crazy. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to spend all my time handling emergencies. And it's like, and I think that may be how something like this happens, is they're just like, we can't do it.
But wouldn't the remedy then be, I mean, because, a lot of times, and I mean, like, I like doing this intellectual exercise just in general, but like a lot of times we see things through the filter of, do we support these people or not? Right. So like if people who are, let's say, Trump fans, they're likely to see all the moves that Trump is making as being totally legitimate, and these, justices are out of control and blah, 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 blah. Right. Yeah. On the flip side, if the situation was reversed, and just to use recent history, let's say Biden is trying to push through something that's unconstitutional, like forgiving student debt or whatever, right?
Having like a farm bill aid that is explicitly tied to the race of the person accepting the grants.
Okay,
that's a violation of the 14th Amendment.
Violation of the 14th. So here you have a court that comes out and says, hey,
Can't do that.
injunction, that's racist. You can't do that, right?
Yep.
Or it's discriminatory, whatever.
Right. Right.
Well, if you're that same Trump fan, looking back at that case, you're like, well, yeah, the courts need that power. So, at what point do you kind of have to separate yourself from like, okay, who's in charge and who's not, and to what is best for the system? Isn't this an argument I think could be made that, well, the real emergency here is that the executive has declared an emergency, and then the executive is requesting all these emergency stays on the emergencies that they created. So therefore, isn't the real problem not the judicial system, but the fact that they're using very questionable, and I think intentionally. I think having read through Project 2025 and some of the other things like that they explicitly advocate for. Look, these laws are on the books. It's time they were used to expand the power of the executive. And that's really the intention here. And of course, we could have gone this other way, but that wouldn't have expanded the power of the executive, which is what our objective is. And so, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I'm kind of torn on this one, because I think the real fix is, it. Well, the real fix is never going to happen, and we wind up with a confluence of a few problems, but they were really started because of, and I hate to use the term uniparty because it just sounds so conspiratorial, but like just a kind of bipartisan consensus. There's a lot of bipartisan consensus about what should happen, what shouldn't happen, and so you could write these laws that, were just wide open. I mean, just like crazy levels of stuff. I remember there was one, the one that opened my eyes to it was back during Obama's first term when the Affordable Care Act was being proposed, and there were all these sections in it. It was like, well, as determined by the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Right.
There it is. Or as determined by the Surgeon General to da, da, da. And it's just like, well, who? What if they say something else? It's like, well, it's okay because we're all on the same page here. And when I leave office, the next people that come in, if they're from a different party, they're going to govern basically the same way. It's fine. It's fine. And you could see this with like the Clinton to Bush and Bush to Obama. There's a lot of bipartisan consensus going on with a lot of culture war stuff where everyone's yelling at each other. But like, underneath the
Right.
circus, there's like a lot of similarity. And so they were able to get away with writing this stuff that was just like, hey, the president can do whatever he wants and it's fine. Like if there's an emergency, it's cool. And who gets to decide? Well, he does. And or people that report to him, they can decide. It's fine. And then you have like the administrative state gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Its laws are written in a more and more vague way so that can be up to them, because we don't want to sit around and write the laws ourselves in Congress. We want to like tell them to write it. And then you administer it, and you have your own judges that you can do it. And we don't have to do any of that. We get to like go to parties and be Senator so and so and whatever. And this is very cynical, right? But now you have like a non-uniparty, non-bipartisan consensus person in there, which I think Biden also, to some degree, at least his aides, the one that were running things, were less bipartisan consensus than say Obama was. I think that's probably fair to say. They're willing to push some things that wouldn't have been pushed otherwise.
Right.
And I would imagine the next president is going to be the same way, less of a consensus player. And so really what needs to happen is all these laws need to get changed. All these laws need to get thrown out. A lot of the emergency declaration parts of them need to be removed. A lot of these administrative agencies need to have their powers gutted dramatically. A lot of these laws need to be made much more precise. And the thing is that that's so much work that'll never happen. So what you'll wind up with is probably like a lot of instability. Basically the whole country teeters back and forth. And hopefully we keep walking. We just sort of walk like a drunken person.
Wobble, walk.
wobble forward.
Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down.
They do not, and it's like, well, that as long as that happens and we don't get a disaster, but we're just going to like be set up for a bunch of turmoil. American democracy will look more and more kind of like a joke. It's like, well, like what's the law? Well, it depends on who's in charge, and I think you'll see more of that, because the amount of political will it would take to rewrite a lot of this stuff, to shut off the taps for money. I mean, money alone, much less being important, being the person, being the assistant undersecretary of such and such who, has dinners with the ambassador from Chile and stuff like that. Like, hey, what if that job just goes away? Like, you have no idea the amount of resistance that would take place to something like that, and so it just won't. So it basically has to keep going this way until the whole thing can't, and whatever that looks like in the
Whatever
future.
that looks like. Yeah. You had a smile on your face earlier. You're like, well, the real solution is, and then you cut yourself up. What is the real solution?
Well, so we're kind of overdue for a constitutional convention.
Oh, there you go.
So what we would
250 years, man.
I know it's a long time.
Yeah, long
Um,
time.
but there are certain things like for the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights needs to be expanded. Um, so, for example, right now it's possible for you to be brought up you to basic to have your entire life destroyed by an administrative agency and a judge that reports to that administrative agency. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it's
Oh
like,
yeah, I was reading that in Neil Gorsuch's book,
yeah, oh,
which was
he has
excellent, by the way. Yeah,
so many examples. His like some of the examples in there are completely infuriating. You're like,
yeah.
this would
What?
never happen. It's like, oh yeah, no,
It already has. Yeah,
don't
yeah.
misunderestimate someone's who's all interested in being the important person. What they're willing to do to you in order to continue to be important.
It reminds me of Les Miserables. You know, the
Mm.
where you get the I don't know whether you want to call him a power hungry, just a somebody who's just overly concerned with no.
Oh,
This
Chauvelin.
case, yeah, this case has to be closed my way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think it's like, well, there needs to be since we've somehow interpreted these amendments to allow something like that, that means we need an amendment that shuts all that stuff down. And
right.
you know, what you hope is for it to happen in a constitutional convention and not something like like this Rob, where it's like, oh, let's go find the people that did this to us and execute them publicly,
Right,
cheering crowds. It's like,
right, right,
you
right.
don't want that to happen. That's really bad. So, um, so yeah, it's kind of
Would
like
make for great television, though,
it would. People would tune
since
in.
that's the overriding concern here.
Yeah, people would watch it on TikTok. No, the same thing when people talk about like, well, what's the solution to the budget? Blah blah blah. Which the big beautiful bill is making its way through. And it's like, well, yeah, the real solution isn't going to happen. The real solution only happens once the dollar loses its reserve currency because of hyperinflation. And when that happens, we'll find out real quick what things are like discretionary or non-discretionary. I love when people say, "Well, that's non-discretionary." It's like there no such thing. Like,
Well, it's
um,
interesting because I don't know if you heard. Who's that senator that's always the budget guy? Ron Johnson.
oh yeah,
Uh, but dude, he was on some news show
yeah.
last
Voting
week.
no. I vote no.
Yeah, he votes no. He's like that's Ron Johnson. He's definitely going to be a no.
It involves spending
He,
money. No.
no, but he had something that's just so I thought eminently reasonable sounding, which was, um, first of all, he asked the question, "Do you have any idea what the federal government spends and every year?" You know, and I think the number that most people come up with is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.7 trillion or whatever. It's like no, that's discretionary, right? The real number, because you have to do non-discretionary. Non-discretionary is like Medicare. Let's say that's an entitlement, right? Like Social Security entitlement, right? All these different things that have to continue no matter what that were written in. When you add everything
No
up,
matter what.
no matter what, right? When you add everything up, it's like 7 trillion, and we take in somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a $2 trillion deficit every year.
Mm-hmm.
Every year.
Mm-hmm.
And so the person was asking, well, where does this money come from? It's like, well, we borrow it, we print it, and we set it, we do a treasury auction. People show up and buy T-bills, which I don't think people understand the mechanisms, but I think it even is worse than that. I think most people don't even understand what money actually is. Like they think that, that the money has some value to it. And how is it actually created? It's like, at the end of the day, it's a representation of value, and theoretically, the value of your monetary supply is equal to the amount of product that you guys create. Like just in the abstract, right?
Oh, by the way, this totally reminds me of this cartoon I saw, the little 4-panel thing. This knight
Yep.
goes into the dragon's cave and is like trying to steal from him. And the dragon's like, "Whoa, whoa, what are you doing?" It's like, "Well, I'm stealing." He's like, "You can't do that. This is my gold." It's like, "Well, why do you have all this gold anyway? Why don't you just like trade it in for cash? It takes up less space." And he's like, "Cash? That's worth nothing. After the Rothschilds got a hold of blah blah blah." And he's like going on and on. Finally, the knight just walks out. He's like, "I can't." I mean, like a
Forget
conspiracy
it.
theorist dragon, it's like,
Dragon.
"Whoa, currency, that's worthless. I gotta have my gold, man. I got my
Right, right,
gold."
right. Well, and I think people don't understand what hyperinflation actually is. Like, and they've never experienced it. They don't know, But it's like, dude, um, if you saw what happened to the last treasury auction, I mean, we auctioned off very few of the treasuries we had put up, and at a much higher interest rate. This is people don't understand. Like, you have to offer a higher interest rate of return in order to attract people to come buy them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just like, well, I don't want 5%. I want 7%, whatever the number is, right? Well, as you sell the higher rates, now you have to pay more in interest, which means you have to borrow more money, which means people want less of your treasuries, which means you have to increase the rates to attract more buyers. And it just becomes this cycle that gets out of control,
Oh yeah.
and, he was making a great point. He was like, like the US has like insane amounts of wealth. Like, if you think about like all the trillions of dollars of, whether it's oil or minerals or land or whatever else that the federal government either owns or controls access to. I mean, we have 30 trillion in debt now, 36 trillion in 10 years. They're estimating that will double. So if the big beautiful bill is passed, we'll be in the 60s trillions in 10 years. That and he was pointing out, he's like, that even assumes that the tax cuts that are in the big beautiful bill don't even go through, because the math that they're using assumes a 4% tax hike,
Mm-hmm.
which, in order for that to happen, the bill can't pass. So it's like, okay, so we're assuming, but he goes, even if you extrapolate all that, he said, okay, we're going to end up with 60, 70, 80 trillion dollars worth of debt here in 10 years. What, trillion here, trillion there. Pretty soon you're talking about some real money. He's like, it's still dwarfed by the amount of resources that we have. It's just that in order to get to those resources, that's the whole drill baby drill or whatever else you want to call it. You have all these processes that basically restrict access to that stuff out of whatever the great reasons are that we are doing that. And so it's like, okay, well, at some point here, you got to talk about how is this, how do we walk ourselves, it's like, he's like, there's no interest in that. So he's like whatever the big beautiful bill's intentions were, what it's become is basically this is, he goes, I can't vote for it. He goes, I don't know, like, he's like, I mean, I want to, he's on the Republican side, so he has to like,
I would love to vote for it.
I really want to, but
I
we're
can't.
not, and somebody just needs to let the president know, that I'm like, I'm sure he does know that, bro. Yeah, better
Look,
informed than anybody watching this show.
I think my favorite part of the big beautiful bill is, and this is something that has been in common with every giant spending bill that I've seen. I think in my entire lifetime, I think all of them. I'm struggling to find one that didn't have this, where they'll say, "Well, look, this bill." No, but hold on, hold all of your protests here. This bill reduces the deficit over the next 10 years. And you're like, wow, how does it do that? And then you look at it, and it's basically, it'd be like if someone told you, they're like, hey, look, I know you're swimming in credit card debt, but don't worry. You have a plan over the next 10 years for that credit card debt to go down. Okay. And you're like, okay, how are you going to do it? So, well, for the first 5 years, I'm going to borrow more. I'm going to double the size of my credit card debt. over the next 5 years. But then after that, I promise to go on a budget. All this stuff here that that I bought and my lifestyle, the way it had expanded under that, I'm scaling all those back after 5 years. And then by the end of the next 5 years, I'll have owe less than I do right now. But you see, first though, for the first 5 years, I gotta owe more. I gotta go further in debt.
But I just
Very
need you to back my play here. Back my play
just matter of
because
fact. And
the cards will get better. Yeah.
anybody that listens to this is just like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard because every 2 years Congress turns over. And the part where they're like, well, and how many times have we heard it's like, well, we have an emergency session here in Congress because these tax cuts are set to expire. And we have got to protect these tax cuts. It's like, yeah, they're set to expire because that was part of the
You
five
selling them in the
year
first place.
thing,
Right. Right.
that then, well, we're just lowering taxes for 5 years. After that, they go up. See, and so that's what pays for all the stuff that we're doing now, right?
Right. Right.
And it's like, oh man, I don't know why we didn't leave those permanent back then. It's like, yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
It's so funny. But the thing is like I struggle to think of one of these spending bills over the entire time I've been following this, decades now, where hasn't been just a convenient refrain. It's like no one is serious about cutting this stuff. It reminds me. Did you ever see that movie, Company Man, Ben Affleck? This is back in like 2009, 2010. It was.
Okay.
It was right after the 2008 financial crisis, and people, especially in finance, were just losing their jobs. It was people all over the world, and so they put together this movie very quickly, given how long it takes to make a movie. But it basically follows Ben Affleck, who's a finance guy, getting laid off as a result of the financial crisis, 2008, and he's got this incredible lifestyle. He's got his beautiful house, he's got his family, private school, he's got his country club, whatever. And he's suddenly, has nothing, right? Almost like overnight. And it's wild watching him. Affleck is great. I love that guy. But it's so fun watching him try to like navigate this world where it's like, well, I got to keep my country club membership. Like I've got to include. It's like, well, why? Well, because if I'm going to get back into this world, I mean, that's where all of my potential clients are. This like that is non-negotiable. And so like he's out there and he's like visibly more and more desperate. And of course, people can smell desperation. Like,
Sure.
Can't stand it. But he's just like, I've got to, I've got to keep this. And it's like, oh well, it turns out, like, well, the private school, we can't get rid of the private schools. Like, turns out you can. Turns out there's a lot of stuff that you thought is like, well, we can't touch that. It's like, well, that's just because the money isn't gone yet. As soon as the money is actually gone, you find out real quick
what you can touch.
Touch. And a lot of stuff where they say, oh, this entitlement, oh, we can't touch that, we can't touch that. And it's like, you're gonna have to. You're gonna have to. There isn't a way out of it. I mean, I almost applaud the Democrats for trying to find a way out of it by just importing mass number of people. It's like, if we can get more people here paying taxes, we can cut that curve, right? So it's like, well, if the productivity of everybody goes up, then the people that we're paying for through Medicare, Social Security, their futures are secured by this wave of new people coming in.
New workers. Yeah.
And it's like, I get that as a strategy, but and you're going to wind up like, this is not, it's not feasible. This is not something that's going to last. So it's just a question of how long can you keep borrowing? How long can you do the, this one balances the budget in 10 years kind of thing? At some point it stops.
Well, and they're gambling. I think that
it'll seem it right when it happens. Everybody like, well, of course we knew it. Everyone knew it all along, but everyone's going to be surprised when it happens.
Well, yeah. So I think two things. One is they're gambling that for sure they can do it one more time, and they got to. It ain't me. It ain't me, right? That has to deal with that.
I'll be out of office by the time,
Right. Have you seen that show Paradise on Hulu yet?
Paradise.
Yeah, it's the black guy who's the adopted son in This Is Us. You ever see that show? It's like a long show where the dad dies at the
Oh,
very
oh,
beginning.
oh. Okay, I started watching it, but I have not finished it yet. So don't give me any
But you
spoilers.
saw the first episode.
Yeah, so I know where they are and stuff.
Okay, all right. So for those of you guys that haven't seen it, and it's not too big of a spoiler, but actually they did a really good job of hiding it. Uh,
For the first episode.
the fact that they reveal it at the end of the first episode and I didn't already know is pretty good because like for people that don't know, like you and I have totally different styles of how we like to watch movies and shows. You prefer to know absolutely nothing and then just go in and be surprised. And I am more like,
I don't even wanna know the
yeah, don't,
genre.
yeah, just
Am I gonna
you said it was a
laugh?
good
Am I gonna be
show. I want to
scared? I don't
watch it.
know.
That's it, right? Which I admire. I also am like, you know, I want to know something about the premise. I want to know who's in it. I want to know sometimes who directed it, right? Like, I mean, is this a quality thing or is it, especially just because there's so much crap out there, right? And so I'm really good about like reading these synopsises and stuff like, I'll give this a shot. This particular one, I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. So, hey, if you don't want to be spoiled on
Just
the
the first
first
it's
first
just the
episode,
first
so just
episode.
cover your ears or
It's
whatever.
okay.
But the idea is that you find out at the end of the first episode is that they're actually in an underground city. It's like the Truman Show, basically. They're in an underground bunker because there's been a world-ending event, and there's only like 30,000 people or so, 25,000 people that are left in this small little Mayberry-style town that's underground, right? And the guy who's the president of the United States, who was the president, but is now basically mayor of this little town, right? But they still call him Mr. President, all this stuff. Still has a Secret Service detail, whatever. He says something through the show, like just as it settles on him, because they do a lot of flashbacks to kind of how did we get here, right? And where he's like, "Oh man, I'm going to be the one holding the bag when it all ends," right? And it's like it is interesting to think like through not just the president, but all these lawmakers, right? If I just try to think like, okay, if I was wearing a congressional pin and I'm going in, I'm getting these briefings, and you can see, I mean, you have to think that these guys are at least as informed as you and I are. I mean, like, I like to think of myself as being fairly informed, but I read a lot of news. I watch a lot of content. These guys are, they're getting all that. Plus they have a whole staff to digest all that stuff and give them, they know. And so I think the idea must be like, okay, well, I mean, it's like musical chairs. We're all just going to keep going around. We know the music is ending at some point. We know we're going to need to find a seat. But I think I got another.
Maybe
I
not
got
yet.
another lap. I got another lap, right? And
Yeah.
but
It's gotta be.
you know, and you said something. I remember when years ago when TARP was happening in '08, you know, and Bush was like, I mean, I remember thinking how obscene that was. They shoveled out $700 billion worth of, you know, and that was just TARP one.
Ah,
Now
pocket
you're just
change.
like, what? Like, because at the time too, I think, you know, it's just like thinking about my kids, you know, my son's 5. When I say, oh, we'll do that next year, like to me, it's not that long. I mean, I can't even believe I mean, we're halfway through this year and I feel like this year hadn't even really started. Like, but hey, I'm 50. So like 1 year is a 50th of my life. 1 year is 20% of his life, right? So it's like it's
Mhm.
2% of my life, 50% of his. You know, it's just a totally
Yeah.
different scale. And I think back then the debt was like $4 trillion or something ridiculously quaint. You know,
So like, well, this we can afford it. We can afford it to save the economy.
yeah,
That's what we were
yeah,
thinking. That's what they thought at the
yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah. I just, but you said something because I said, dude, at some point, don't they have to know? Like, dude, you're just like you're going to bankrupt the system at some point. And you said, I think that is their intention. Like, I think the intention is it's like, dude, you got a seat at the table. So how do I get some of this money into my bag before they throw me out of the casino, you know? Which is a real disturbing thought, but I
How
mean,
how else do you I don't know how else you explain it. I mean, either that or they're just I mean, either that or they can't see what everybody else notices. Like that can't be right.
right.
They know. They know.
Well, and also
And I
this
think
is not something that's up for like, you know, I had a debate a few weeks ago on the tariff policy with a friend of mine, and he, you know, was very anti, because he's anything Trump says, no good. And so obviously this is the dumbest idea ever. I'm like, it's
Orange man
Orange Man
bad.
bad. Yeah, Orange Man bad. I was like, dude, I mean, we can go back and forth. There's plenty of experts on either side that says, this is the worst idea ever. Or this is actually a necessary reset and a perfectly suitable trade tool to use. But at the end of the day, that is all about, like, where do I want to get to, right? Like, I want to get to a place where I have, better rates, better terms, better whatever, right? This one is not really up for debate. It's just like, I would like the system to keep operating. I would like these bills to continue to spend and buy me things that I need, because I don't want to collect. What was that in the Book of Eli? They were collecting handy wipes. The
Oh yeah.
And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Like I got 10 of these.
Oh.
Like, okay.
Oh.
Okay. I think I got something we can work on. So, here's a funny one though. Other countries have gone through hyperinflation before.
Yes.
And it did not involve the collapse of their system. So, was it? I'm trying to think of one that was relatively recent.
Mexico's was 20 years ago. Where they rebased the currency. They did basically they took 10 pesos or 100 pesos, and they just 100 pesos is now 1 peso.
Yeah, it's like the old peso and the new peso. 100 older and 1 new. Turkey, I think it's Turkey. Is that right? Didn't Turkey do this fairly recently? It was like 30-1. I need to look it up. In my head, it was Turkey. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. I think it was Turkey. Because the value kept falling, and then they were like, because I think they were doing like 20% per month of inflation.
Wow.
And then they stabilized it somehow. I don't remember.
Wow, that's crazy. That means every 4 months your buying power halves.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, new Turkish lira, second issue that was introduced at the beginning of 2005. So this is the official currency of Northern Cyprus and Turkey. And in 2005,
this is called.
It's 1,000,000 to 1. They dropped the last 6 zeros. It's 1,000,000 to 1. Yeah, so 2005, Turkish Grand National Assembly passed legislation in December 2003, enabling the redenomination of the Turkish lira by eliminating 6 zeros and introducing a new currency. The Turkish new lira was launched on January 1, 2005, to replace the previous Turkish lira at a rate of 1 new Turkish lira, equivalent to 1,000,000 old Turkish lira. The revaluation caused the Romanian leu, also revalued in 2005, to become the world's least valuable currency for a while. Same time, the Turkish government launched 2 notes in denominations of 50 and 100, which would have been 50 million and 100 million. So there you go. The exchange rate intensified depreciation in 2018, hitting $4.50 US per TRY. Okay, 490. So, yeah. Okay, so the 2018 is when it was dropping. So in 2005, which is fairly, I mean, that's
20 years
recent-ish.
ago. Yeah. But I think the big difference there is too, though, they're not an issuer of sovereign debt in the way that we are.
Yes, exactly.
And they still, so if they owe $1 million American dollars to somebody, it doesn't matter what they're paying with, old lira or new lira. It's still going to be, they have to translate into dollars to pay. The advantage that we have is that we owe in dollars, and so we can just print and settle the debt.
We can print.
We owe 60 trillion. Here's a $60 trillion coin. Debt's paid. Right?
Yeah.
Spend your money.
Well, yeah. don't spend it all in one
Right, right.
place. But I think what's interesting about this though is that it's not an instant like death sentence to the ruling government, right? So it's not like if when you redenominate the currency, it's French Revolution time. It's the Roman Republic falling and like their vandals are breaking everything in your city. Like it's like no, it's not great. No, nobody likes
Mhm.
this, but you can actually survive a currency redenomination.
So several
So
cans to kick down
maybe,
the road then. So no big deal.
yeah. Well, and I think this
What's
may
the
be
big
the
deal?
thing
We're
is like,
still having treasury auctions. I mean, what's the problem?
well, so this, yeah, well, and
If all else fails,
it's
we'll
kind of
just
like the
blow your country to smithereens and take all your stuff.
well, yes, but but I mean, think about it this other way, right? So, if you're, let's say you're a doctor, right? If you're a doctor and someone has some terrible disease and you treat them successfully, they're going to be singing your praises forever, right? Like this doctor saved my life.
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
you're going to get a whole ham and a bottle of
Right,
scotch from them every Christmas for the rest
right,
of their lives, and maybe it's written into their will too.
right.
Like that. That's just how much they're going to love you for doing this. On the other hand, if you saved somebody's life through preventative medicine, they don't know it
Mm,
because you would have had to have known what would have
mhm.
happened had you not done whatever. It's like, hey, we need to get you on such and such. We need to get you an iron supplement. We need to do this. You need to
Well,
do
there's
these
always an
things. Stop
alternate
smoking.
reading of history that you can do. Well, do we know that? It probably wouldn't have happened that way at all. And,
Wouldn't have happened anyway. Like, my doctor is a pain in the
right,
ass. It
right.
makes me do all this stuff, and like, is it helping? Well, I don't know, but now I stopped smoking, so
Yeah,
maybe I don't
he
know.
told me I had to.
Uh, um,
Right,
and but the thing is that he might have actually saved your
right.
life, but you're not. All right, so
I'm
um,
following you. That's a good.
if
That's a good analogy.
yeah,
Yep.
so the politician that saves the country by avoiding the disaster that would have been gets no credit for it. But the one that after the whole thing happens shepherds the country through good statesmanship, becomes the father of his country, or mother,
Or mother. Yeah.
depending on the politics.
It's like that.
Yeah, if it was
It's like
Harris,
that.
could have been.
That scripture quote from Pulp Fiction. But blessed is the man who is the shepherd of his brother.
Yeah,
Yeah. For his is the
it's
kingdom
not
of heaven.
real.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think that's probably
Interesting.
what they're thinking. It's like there's no payoff for my career as a politician to avoid this disaster. Because think of what avoiding this disaster would mean. Sir, your taxes do not go down. In fact, they go up. And your entitlements, they do not go up. They go
They
down.
go down. Yeah.
And you know, you don't like it's like when you're spending things on your credit card and not paying it off. It's great because you have the stuff. And you're like, well, I'm gonna start paying it off. And it's like, well, now what? How was your life like? It sucks. Right? Because all your time, all your resources are like, well, there's another
Yep.
$800 paying for something that I already bought months ago and I'm bored of now.
Yep. Or I
And
forgot where
like
it is.
now I'm paying
Yep.
for, yeah, or pissed it away doing something, and like, but now I'm paying it, and look at all this other stuff that I can't have,
Mhm.
and that's why so many people just don't do it,
Mhm.
because it's horrible. Take it from me as someone who
Yep.
does.
Me
Um,
too.
so, um, so I think that's the situation that they're in. Like you'd have to have everyone voting together to like go through this horrible thing together to avoid a disaster that hasn't even happened.
Yeah. Okay. So we can put that in the safely in the that's never going to happen bucket.
Yep.
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 Well
Sorry.
done, man. Well
Sorry.
done. Yeah, you got me there. You got me there. I
I apologize. Always the voice of happiness and optimism.
think it. I
Yeah.
mean, it is happy. It's less for me to worry about. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else? What else
It'll be
can you
fun.
take off my plate today?
What else are you worried about?
Um, right. Um,
Oh, hey, here's a question for you. Serious question. Are you guys so Texas is about to be, I mean, it was signed. It's about to be a school choice state.
oh, I did see that. Yep.
Yeah. Now my kids are really too old to take advantage of this. I mean, oldest is graduated. Youngest will be starting her sophomore year. So if we take advantage of it, it'll be for the last 2 years of high school to pay for a private school she's already in. So I mean, that's nice. It'll help offset that if they qualify. I don't know if they will, based on I haven't looked through all the rules and stuff. Is this something that you guys are excited about? Is this a win for people with elementary age students like yourself?
I think it's absolutely a win. I'm going to get flack from my teacher friends on this one, but I mean,
Oh
but
no.
I think yeah, I think it's a massive win. I think I don't know that we'll personally take advantage of it in the sense that we really like the school the kids are in. That they're in public school and it's a good one. Uh,
You're happy
yeah,
with the
yeah,
experience.
it's a
Yeah.
high rated good school. I mean, we're very involved. Um, like the staff. The staff likes us, likes the kids. Sometimes. um,
When they're not
yeah,
being
but no, man. But
hooligan.
they've been really great with the kids, and the kids are doing good. So I mean, but knowing that you have the choice, and I think also knowing that the choice is out there, it really theoretically, and a lot of this stuff is just in theory, you know. I was having a debate with with somebody over the big beautiful bill a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about. Well, I brought up the Medicare, the government being able to negotiate all Medicare drugs now, put us on most favored nation or whatever you want to call that term
Mhm.
for our drug pricing, and they're like, well, what's going to happen? They weren't a fan for these reasons, but it's all prediction, it's all predictive, right? It's like, well, I think that'll put us in a much better. I don't see how being allowed to negotiate would put you in a worse position, unless you were a shitty negotiator. But I mean, in
But maybe
general,
the
that
price
should
went
be,
up.
yeah. Oh, who's in charge of this? Um, so I don't see being forced to pay retail rack rates. I think removing that puts you in a measurably better situation. I don't see how you can argue against that. On the other hand, it is we're forecasting, right? So it's like the whole argument about like, oh, if we lower taxes, then people have more money to spend, which goes into the economy, which actually makes the GDP go up, which then makes the revenue of the federal government go up. All that in theory makes sense. Now, does it actually work out like that in practice? We can look historically back and see to what extent that's true or false, right?
Yeah.
Um,
There's a sweet spot where less taxes gives you more revenue, more taxes doesn't.
correct,
But then you can get too low, in which case, no, now you actually need the more taxes.
correct,
So trying to find that sweet spot is always very
correct.
difficult.
And I think it's also going back to your school choice thing. It's all about whether it's governing or parenting or whatever else is about priorities, right? So it's like, hey, my priority is that. Let's say my priority is that my kids mom's able to stay home with the kids, and the kids don't have daycare and whatever else. Maybe the kids are homeschooled, right? We can afford to do that. We just have to figure out, we say this is a priority, and then we organize our life around that priority, right? In
Mhm.
this particular case, like, we're not making any changes right now about schooling. However, the fact that it's out there as an option gives us more options to consider, and also I think forces a little bit more uh, competitive mindset at the public school level. Like, hey, we got to keep our performance up, or these parents. It's not like we're going to get in trouble from an oversight committee, or
Right.
but the actual parents will just remove their kids, and we won't.
Parents might
Right,
walk.
parents might walk, and I think I don't see how that's a bad thing, uh, assuming that you prioritize the education of your children. I don't see how that's a bad
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, it'll still be the most convenient option, I think, is
Public
to
school.
go to this local school that you're zoned to, right? It's nearby. You don't have to worry about schlepping them across town because you like that particular math tutor system over the private school over there, whatever. You don't have to mess with any of that
Well, in
stuff.
fact, so Dan and I were just talking about this because his daughter she just finished her first grade of middle school at the public school, but there's a charter school that is
Mhm.
exceptional. That's real close to us, and they have a lottery system. You have to apply every year, or whatever. He's been applying her there year after year after. She finally got in, and so
Ooh,
she start yeah. So
excited.
she's starting in the fall. He's real excited. She's real excited. They got to wear uniforms. They got to do all this stuff, but
Charter.
charter.
Yep.
But um, it's also paid for. right? So the element of
Hmm.
charter is that we're paying whatever the tuition would be. Whereas I don't know how the school choice works out. If it means that the tuition is paid for no matter what it costs, or if you're given a dollar amount and then you have to make up the
Yeah.
delta. So if it's
It's a flat. It's a flat rate. There's a private flat rate and then a homeschool flat rate. The homeschool flat rate is very low. It would be enough to cover really textbooks, but not a whole lot else. But but it's like, well, hey, we'll cover the physical materials for you, but you're on your own after that. The private one isn't that high. Like it's not going to be like, oh, this super fancy prep high school over here that's run by the Catholics or whatever. It's like it's not going to cover that. But it might cover. There will be schools. I mean, it sort of creates an ecosystem. There'll be schools that will peg their admission
to
price,
that.
their tuition price, to whatever it
Yep.
is. It's like, hey, you just endorse the check to us. That covers your account. You're done. That will definitely happen. Um, how close it'll be right now, I don't know. I don't know. There's the number that was on it. Let me just pull it up. School choice. It was $10,000 per student, and then for private school, and then for homeschool, and it starts September 1st is when the law goes into effect. So probably fall of 26 is when people will actually be able to use it because there's all this stuff that they have to put in there.
Mhm.
Homeschoolers is 2,000 a year. So yeah, school supplies, books, school supplies, 2,000 would cover that, I think, pretty well.
I mean, for a
But it's
homeschool family, and our brother homeschools his kids, so like we were homeschooled, so I think we can speak to it with some authority. But generally speaking, I think that's interesting. There would be a part of me that'd be like, well, why are you ripping off the homeschool families? But on the flip side, they're not really doing it for money. That's a sacrifice that they're making for their kids. So the $2,000, I think, would be a massive help to them. Um,
yeah. And again, I think you will find companies that will pop up that will do like an all-inclusive, like all your school books, all everything, flat rate. It's
for
pegged to
Texas students is
whatever.
this much. Yeah.
Texas,
Mhm.
it's this much. We just ship it to you in a box that has everything in it.
Yeah.
Everything. Your TI-85 calculator to get through
Ooh, I had to
trigonometry.
buy that myself.
Yeah, yeah. All the books, everything shrink wrapped to your door
Yeah.
for whatever that amount. That will probably happen too.
Yeah.
By the way, can I go ahead?
I was just gonna say I'm just a fan in general of school choice, and have been. I've been at odds with even though I've voted left for probably the last 20 some years. Um, it always put me at odds with people on the left. Because be like, oh no, public. What are you talking about? And I was in this PTA of this elementary school in the Great Hills here in Austin, and they had a lobby day. And we were supposed to go up there and lobby against school choice or whatever. And I didn't say what my viewpoint was. I just signed up for the lobby day and showed up. And yeah, I was I was quite the curiosity. I was like, well, I don't know that it's such a bad idea. Explain to me why. Well, if you could maybe,
Mm,
sir, maybe you could back up and maybe explain why. But there are people, dude. There are people on the left, and I mean, people that are really hardcore public school advocates. And I do appreciate this point of view if it was actually done this way. So if it was true that by limiting school choice and saying that, hey, everybody has to go to the public school system, if that was actually applied across the board, rich, poor, didn't matter, right? There's no private schools for rich kids or for poor kids, right? There's just no private school
mhm.
whatsoever. And everybody must go to public school. Would that drive more parent involvement? Would more parents show up at the PTA? Then we would benefit from, let's say the CEO of X, Y, and Z or whatever, whose kid lives in your neighborhood, and now his wife is on the PTA, whatever the case may be, right? And you can extrapolate all these.
Yeah,
You'd have more.
there'd be a lot of really interesting social cohesion
I,
benefits.
I agree, and even
Yeah.
for the lack of choice that I would give up, I would support, not almost, I would support that versus as a more preferred solution, because I believe that, like, look, at the end of the day, you're trying to educate the next generation, like again, like leveling up to a government point of view. you're trying to educate the next generation, make sure that you have the highest quality kids coming in to run things, right? I mean, that's the, I mean, it's the
Mhm.
most basic succession planning
Like,
you could get, and it's like, okay, well, that is
these are the future bosses.
exactly. And if and it's the same reason I'm against, like, okay, look, if Congress is going to vote through the Affordable Care Act, which I think they should have, but I don't think they should exempt themselves. I think they should have to be in the same system, right? That way, you're getting real time feedback of, is the system any good or not, and what are the screaming emergencies that need to be taken care of. As long as you can opt out, um, the people with the most means and the most resources are always going to opt out. Why wouldn't you opt out? You know. Anyway,
Yeah.
what were you going to say?
Oh, it was something on education, but it was like my right wing stupid event of the week. Um, Usually I bag on the lefties because they're a bunch of morons, but so are the right wing guys.
No shortage of
Um,
morons on that side either. Yeah.
oh my gosh! So there was one that happened this last week that I almost fell out of my chair laughing because it was so stupid. So San Francisco, you might have seen this. This actually showed up kind of on the national radar. San Francisco school district and their big plan, big reorganization stuff they do, every once in a while. They included last slide in their presentation that they are incorporating grading for equity next year. Okay, so grading for equity. What do you think that is? Just you have you ever heard this phrase before?
Nope. So I'm pulling this straight out of my butt.
Okay. Yeah, please tell me what you think this
Grading for
phrase means.
equity means probably taking into account the disadvantaged status of certain groups as to why they didn't score as high as the more advantaged groups did, and then adjusting the scores accordingly.
Yeah. Okay. So if that was true, now this is what all the right wing people think it
Oh,
is.
okay.
It's like, oh, right. So
Well,
some teacher out
I'm
there,
against that. Just for the record.
yeah, some teacher out there looks at the color of your skin and it's like, or the fact that maybe this kid is straight and that one's gay, and it's like, well, we're just going to adjust the scores in order to better
Oh, I was
level the
thinking that. I
playing
was
field
thinking
for
like kids from a poor background who don't have access to the internet or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
we'll give them a boost.
Yeah.
We'll give
Right.
them more points, whatever.
Meanwhile, if you're
Okay.
Chinese, of course, you
So
deserve 10 points cut off your score, regardless.
yeah. I mean, because you're like a
You have
test taking
unfair
machine.
parents, man. You had the advantage of parents who really, really, really cared about
Okay.
you. It's unfortunate, but you're penalized.
So everybody's up in arms and they get the whole thing killed, right? So make a huge stink about it, shows up in national newspapers, people are yelling
Oh,
about
okay. Hey, so
racism
a victory
and
for.
all this stuff. Okay, so here's what grading for equity really is. Okay, now this is it took me a while to like cut through the BS to find out what this really is. I was able to find some articles written from the Harvard Business School back in like 2018, before all this was blew up. So here's what grading for equity is. Your grading structure rewards certain things and not other things.
As all grading structures do.
Okay, as all grading structures do. You understand this as someone who builds incentive structures. If you were, say, to build an incentive structure based on how many calls you made, what kind of behavior do you think you would get out of that? What kind of workers would be produced from the person who makes the most calls makes the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so uh, there's a lot of things about the grading systems for a school experience that you don't really think of as like, oh, I'm rewarding X rather than Y,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So
It's a failure to notice that it's an incentive system. Yeah.
exactly. And people don't, because a lot of times with the grading stuff, I mean, I never took a class, and I work in higher ed. I've never taken a class that was on grading. There's been one and an only one presentation that I went to for it was a professional development thing where they explicitly talked about grading and what grades mean and how they should be used. One. Everybody is sort of, oh, you just do whatever you know what you've been in school this whole time. You know what you're doing. Um, so like here's some examples. Okay, so let's say you have 3 tests spread throughout the semester. Okay, and you give them all equal point values.
Okay.
All right. What you're doing is you're rewarding the students who had a better teacher the year before,
Right.
because that first test really covers what you
Prior
learned
knowledge.
last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, if you're at an extremely strong school where you can assume that the people before you
Did a great job.
had did a great job, then it's fine. But if not, if someone comes to your high school, say, after getting bumped from, say, a very low performing middle school, they're going to make a C in your class, even if they wound up mastering the
By
material
the
by the
end.
end, because the first test is worth the same amount as the
Interesting.
last test.
Okay. Yep. I follow
And
you.
you don't think about that because you're just like, oh, if I have 3 tests, they're all worth an equal
Right.
amount. And it just doesn't occur to you, I'm rewarding the ones who did this. Let's say my students get confused about this all the time. I have to like walk through them the thought process. They're like, Dr. Maddie, can we have extra credit? And I'm always like, no, you cannot. And I'm like, well, why not? It's like, well, because extra credit, if I give extra credit, then the grades for the class then become balanced around the extra credit. Because if I turn in a grade chart that is all A's to the registrar, they're going to be like, what is this? My boss will call me on the phone. Like, what are you
I
doing?
have a lot of smart kids, boss.
Um, yeah,
I'm an
they all
amazing
did the extra
professor.
credit. They all did the extra credit. It's like, no, because you want a certain spread of A's, B's, C's, D's, and F, right? Or at least some kind of reasonable arrangement of them.
That's according to
And
your incident structure.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
you
have
have
I
an
have to
incident
do that.
structure. That's right. Yeah.
Right. And so if there's extra credit, then that has to be taken into account into what's going to go on with this. So here's the people that do extra credit are the ones that go to tutoring. Because a lot of times at tutoring, what they'll do is they'll say, what assignments do you have? Let's work through some assignments. Like, well, I have this extra credit thing. Like, okay, well, let's work on that. If you're someone who can go to tutoring, extra credit works great for you. If it if it's not, it does not work great for you.
Mhm.
Now, as one thing in college, the university I go to, there's tutoring services available for everybody. It's free. It's covered in the cost of your tuition. So everybody that's a student there has equal access to tutoring.
Teaching kids to be communists at an
At a,
early age. I like it.
I know, right? But in public school, that's not the case. So if you do that, if you put extra credit on there, you have just given an advantage to people that are going to tutoring,
Mhm.
that can afford
Mhm.
tutors. Same thing if you have like a homework grade. If you're like, okay, there's homework, and you have to turn that in every day. Well, now what I'm doing is I'm incentivizing the people who have a place in their home and a schedule that is stable enough to where they can do their homework every day. And so you might get to the end of the year and you have 2 students that learned equal amount and they scored the same on both exam on the final exam, but one of them made a C and the other one made an A because of the
Extra credit and whatever else.
extra
Yeah.
credit. Well, because of they were able to turn in their homework every day.
Well, so
So it's like,
what's
okay,
your strategy is just you have one exam at the end.
no, what I do is I do lots of exams all through the semester, and you get to retake them. So there are different questions on them, of course, but it's like, oh, you didn't do well that last time. No problem. Let's just try it again. You just try it again as many times as you need until you learn it at the end. And it's not something you can fake. So it's not like, well, you just have to guess right. Like, it's like there's no guessing. Guessing is impossible on a test like this. You just have to get better at it. And so make a lot of mistakes. Hey, the first test you failed, it was just practice. Aren't you glad you made mistakes on that one so
Mm-hmm.
early? So now you know, you know. Um, so yeah, so I the that approach, right? Grading for equity has this really scary sounding name. It's a trigger word for people on the
Equity.
right. Equity. And so they're thinking, oh my gosh, right? We're going to bake in racism into or discrimination into the grading system. It's like, no, it's just like be aware of what your grades are actually measuring. And then if you want to measure that, then great.
Well, I don't understand
Put it
the.
in. If you don't want to measure it, don't do it.
Well, so this speaks to a couple of different interesting topics, but just to close the education loop for myself, what was this law? Had it been passed or this initiative been embraced, what would the new hoops be that people have to jump through?
So what it would have involved is the teachers probably having to go to, as part of their normal professional development stuff, seminars on this, and they would need to show if there are these kind of assignments that you need to be able to show that your assignments are actually measuring the knowledge from that you're supposed to learn, not these other things, unless those other things are important. So for example, I'll give you one example at a university level. So The business school will count you absent if you are late at all. If you are 1 minute late, you're absent. And after 3 absences, they will start deducting from your final grade. You're like, why would they do that?
To
It's like,
teach you how
well,
the world
because
works. That's right.
you got to show
Yeah,
up
on time
on
to your
time,
job. That's right.
prepared. If you show up in your pajamas, we're counting you absent. It's like, but I was on time. You're dressed unprofessionally, absent, right? And it's like, well, we got to do that because the aims of this program
Mm-hmm.
are we're trying to build that
Mm-hmm.
that culture so that you're ready when you leave to go into a job. Okay, that's fine, right? But if I'm doing that in my logic class, if I'm like, hey, if you're here 1 minute late, you're absent. How is that? How is that helping the goals of learning
Mm-hmm.
logic? It's not doing anything. I mean, I like, yeah, I'm holding the line. These students can't
That's a
get away.
tough professor.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
can't get away with anything. But it's like, hey, okay, so I've had students that consistently missed the first 5 minutes of the day because they had to drop off their kid brother at school because that's their job and their family. And it's like, well, okay, and traffic was bad. That puts you at a disadvantage. You missed the first 5 minutes. Hopefully, you got notes from somebody. You're responsible for the information. I'm not making it easier for
But
you.
I'm also not going to penalize you
Why would I?
unnecessarily. Right,
It
right.
doesn't mean anything for my class. It means something for other ones. And so it's like, hey, you need to be aware and you need to be able to present a plan showing how your class is really focused on the knowledge and not being good at the mechanics of going to class.
I think it's interesting.
That's it. That's all that it would have done.
Yeah, I think that's interesting how these words get co-opted and then bastardized.
Or turn into like the boogeyman.
Right. So
Yeah.
equity in this example, is the trigger word. On the left, I can think of a ton of different trigger words that people have come up with, but it's just it's interesting. So how
Well,
do you? It's because people just don't even read. Really, it's like, oh, this is easier to smash this on a bumper sticker and hey, we don't want to miss an opportunity to raise a couple $100 million, from our gullible idiots that follow us, So yeah,
well, and what
look what they're doing in California.
a rare. Well, they were able to shut it down. It's like, what a rare chance to be able to mobilize conservatives in San Francisco. Like, why
And
wouldn't
now
you
we've
go to Cap-
now we've identified who they are. We know their propensity to actually work. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So strategically,
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense. But it's one of those where it's just like, man, we right wingers sometimes.
That's
So
interesting,
stupid.
man. That is really interesting. Well, it reminds me of the time that AOC successfully got Amazon to abandon their plans to expand in her district.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
It was something like, I can't remember what the number was. It was something like $15 billion worth of tax credits or something. That the deal was Amazon was going to come into her district and it was going to create all these jobs, which would have been amazing for her district.
You're going to build. They're going to do all sorts of stuff.
It builds. You'd have construction projects, of course, all the new workers, then all the new food that would be ordered at all the restaurants and hot dog stands, and the kids that would end up going to those schools. People don't a lot of times extrapolate that, but she was so hung up on this 15. I think it was 15. If I remember right, that was the number. 15 billion is for some reason stuck in my head.
They were going to give Amazon a tax rebate, so they wouldn't have to pay their corporate taxes
for the next 10 years or whatever the number was going to be, right? And which is a common thing. You're trying to lure. At the end of the day, and I remember getting like inundated with this data when I lived in DC for a while, and then I lived in Houston, and then I ended up going back to DC. What DC has that Houston doesn't is public transportation. Mm-hmm. Amazing public transportation. Houston,
it's pretty crappy.
Yeah, and they were talking about laying down this metro rail in Houston at the time, and then of course when I went back to DC, then there was the expansion of the DC metro with new stations being built. But a lot of times you had this NIMBY type. NIMBY is short for not in my backyard, right? It's like, hey, that sounds great, just not in my backyard. Yeah, just somewhere else, right? I don't want that in my backyard, right? And NIMBY is a real thing that happens like everywhere. That's a bipartisan We don't want a nuclear waste facility on the next lot, right? Like that's pretty common. And so, but yeah, there was this, and it was like, dude, you don't realize, man, that yes, they dig that hole in the ground. Yes, it's going to disrupt the traffic pattern, but you're going to create economic possibilities that you can't even fathom right now. Like you're talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of people that are going to go underneath your location. And some of those people are going to come up the escalator and you're going to get a hot dog and they're going to do whatever. And you're going to have, you know what I mean? And it's like, and they don't understand this. And she was, and I remember she made a statement, AOC, going back to the Amazon example, she made a statement that like, why in the world would we give Amazon $15 billion when we could turn around and give that money to our schools and the people who live here locally, et cetera? And it's like,
because you don't have the 15.
There is no 15 billion.
Yeah.
The
The
15
billion doesn't
billion
exist.
is on future earnings of this company based on its location there that they're not going to pay taxes on so that you can get the benefits of all of the, it was just crazy.
It's like, we'll let you build here tax-free. Yeah.
No, we can't do that.
It would be like telling someone that they can live there rent-free. And they're like, well, we're going to give you $1,500 worth of rent to live there for, a couple months. And you say, well, wouldn't that $1,500 be better spent elsewhere? And it's like, yes, but you don't have the $1,500. It's just the $1,500 that they would have paid for you. But instead, they're going to sit there and they're going to like fix up stuff in your house. They're going to do all this stuff for you. It's going to be great. It's like, you're not giving up anything. It's fine. You're fine.
It's fine. It's fine, man. I think it's just some people have the ability to kind of look shortly in the future and create possibility, and other people don't have that ability, I guess. I just, they see it somehow differently. But
well, I mean, for her brand, I think it was more valuable. Like it's better for all those people to miss out on that opportunity in comparison for her to be able to like establish herself as like the anti-corporate, more Democrat socialist standard bearer. And I mean, transcending her own district. I mean, so what if her district suffers a little bit? I mean, it's like the whole nation now gets a standard bearer for these ideas.
Well, thank the Lord, man. Just what we need. Just what we need.
Beautiful thing. It's a beautiful.
Yeah, big beautiful mess.
Hey, well, man, before we go, we need to prediction on the big beautiful bill. Does it pass? Does it not pass? Is it changed in a way that it's unrecognizable? Any predictions?
I would say it's already changed towards something unrecognized. Okay, from its current state,
omnibus spending bill.
Yeah, from its current state. No, I think the administration needs this to pass. I think therefore it will pass.
Okay.
I don't know whether I don't even think honestly. I think 'cause these things get to a point where it's almost like. Do you ever see that movie, The American President, the Michael Douglas?
Oh yeah.
And she says something towards the end about congratulations, you've successfully passed a crime bill that has no hope of ever preventing crime, something like that. But we need to pass it because our identities. And I think
pass the anti-criminal. Yeah,
he's got a claim of victory here, and so whatever comes out of whatever convoluted sausage making process is. They will call that the big beautiful bill, and they will declare victory.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is so good of a prediction. I don't even think I can top it. So I think you're right.
You only need one brain cell to come up with that prediction.
It'll pass and be meaningless at the same time.
Well, it was somebody was talking to me the other day, and I was like, dude, that's a great point. It's like, why would you give Trump credit for fixing X when he wrecked it in the first place? I'm like, oh, you mean the whole arson investigator thing? And it's like, how am I going to have arson to investigate if there is no arson? just our city needs a good arson investigator, and that's why I burned down all those buildings.
Yep.
To make sure that you guys would, because I didn't burn down every building.
And yes, those people suffered, but this way the whole city gets. No, okay, all right.
Think of all the people who didn't suffer because I was on the job. Yeah, exactly. It's like Dexter, right? Yeah. It's like, yes, I'm a serial killer, but just the bad ones. All right, man. Good talk. We'll do it again soon. Let's try to do it next week this time.
Works for me.